You've given us a fascinating collection of information, and we know your time is valuable. So let's cut to the chase.
Okay.
Today, we're diving deep into visual thinking. For problem solving and communication, we're drawing out the core ideas from Dan Rome's book, The Back of the
The
Napkin.
classic. Yeah.
Right. Our mission is pretty simple. Equip you with actionable knowledge, how to use visual thinking to, well, clarify your ideas, conquer business challenges, all without getting bogged down in theory.
Absolutely. And what's so powerful about Rome's work, I think, is how it just demystifies visual thinking. It's not really about artistic talent, is it?
No, not at all.
It's about tapping into your kind of innate visual intelligence to make complex things clear. You've shared some great material, and it's amazing how these simple techniques can have such a profound impact.
Okay, so the book, The Back of the Napkin, pretty memorable title.
Yeah.
But originally it was called The $1,000,000 Chart,
Right. Tells you something.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Tells you about that initial audience, business consultants maybe, aiming for that edge. But the journey to that final title, and even the core framework, quite a ride.
Oh, it really was. There's this great story about Rome's train trip. He's going to meet his publisher, and he's wrestling with these core questions about visuals, numeric or intuitive, individual or comparison, and he's desperately trying to make a catchy acronym.
I can picture it. Stressful.
Totally. You can almost feel the frustration. He's cycling through these letters. VCCI, SCIVQ, VISCQ,
Oh, wow.
QVISC, ISQCV, SICQV, even CQIC. Imagine that mental gridlock on a train.
Right. Just staring at this alphabet soup, pressure's on. And
Then the breakthrough. He swaps the C in SQIC for a D for delta, change.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's SQVID, SQVID. And apparently his reaction was just pure excitement. Skewed. That's it. I can remember that.
Squeed, it does have a ring to it.
He even thought it looked a bit squid-like visually, which just shows, doesn't it? Making ideas stick. A memorable image, a clever name helps you remember it too.
Absolutely. But it wasn't all smooth sailing after that aha moment.
No, not quite. The publisher, well, initially they weren't convinced. They saw it as, a niche book by an unknown author, not exactly a guaranteed bestseller.
That happens. Even great ideas face hurdles.
Exactly. But thankfully, Adrian Zackheim at Portfolio later saw the potential, championed the book, and eventually, The Back of the Napkin got published just as Rome envisioned it, large format, full color. The idea found its perfect form.
It's like the visual idea needed a visual presentation itself.
Precisely. And speaking of capturing ideas visually, quickly, Rome shares this really compelling personal story. It perfectly illustrates the power of this approach, especially under pressure.
Oh, is this the one where he had to cover for a colleague? Give a speech in Sheffield?
That's the one. To British education experts, appointed by Tony Blair, no less, about educational websites.
And the catch was,
He admits he didn't know the specifics of those particular websites very well. Talk about being thrown in the deep end.
yikes. So what did he do? Panic.
Well, maybe a little. But his immediate reaction was practical. Grab a pen, grab some napkins on the train.
Right.
And what's so insightful is the simplicity of what he drew.
Yeah.
Just 3 overlapping circles.
Circles. For a government presentation.
Yep. One for the client's vision, one for market research findings, and one for the website team's capabilities. Then just lines connecting them to show the web development process.
Huh. Sounds incredibly basic. Almost too simple.
That's what you'd think. But he stresses how that single, simple sketch was crystal clear, comprehensive, and importantly, instantly understandable. It gave him and his colleague Freddie a ton of talking points.
And Freddie's reaction.
Immediate. He apparently said something like, "That's it, that napkin is the whole thing." He saw it wasn't just a visual, it was the presentation's core framework. Which really highlights that sometimes the most straightforward visual is the most robust, especially for an audience needing a clear overview, like those officials.
And the presentation itself at Sheffield University.
They redrew the napkin sketch on a big blackboard, and it went way over time. Supposed to be 45 minutes, ended up being almost 2 hours.
Because people were engaged.
Totally engaged, asking questions, discussing it. It really hammers home the benefits, doesn't it? Visual thinking clarifies ideas, it's fast, tech-independent, it sparks discussion.
And lets you speak confidently without notes.
Exactly. Creates that shared understanding, a universal visual language.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit. Rome introduces these 6 problem clumps, or the 6 W's. This seemed like a really practical way to categorize business challenges.
It's a fantastic starting point. Helps you define the basic nature of the problem you're tackling visually. First up is who and what.
Right, problems about things, people, roles, like what's actually going on, who's involved, who's in charge.
Exactly. Then you have how much problems, measurement, quantities.
Do we have enough? What are the targets? The measurable stuff.
Spot on. Followed by when problems, timing, sequence.
Deadlines, what comes first, the overall schedule. Makes sense.
Then where. Not just physical location, but direction alignment.
Like, where are we going strategically? How do the parts fit? Our market position.
Precisely. Then there's how problems, relationships, influence between things.
Processes, cause and effect, the dynamics.
And finally, the big one, why problems? The underlying reasons.
Getting to the root cause. Why is this happening? What's driving it?
Yeah. The 6Ws framework is so valuable. It's like a mental checklist, guiding you to the right type of visual for your specific problem.
Speaking of putting it into practice, there's that case study about Daphne, the publishing executive.
Oh yeah, the brand recognition challenge.
Right before an NYSE listing. That's high stakes. Low recognition means.
Big financial risk. Impacts investor confidence, stock price, the whole deal. So Daphne needed a solid branding plan.
So she commissioned a huge global brand survey.
It's extensive. Compared her company to competitors, investor perceptions, client views, the works, and the result.
Data overload.
Massive influx, dozens of reports, a 60-page executive summary. You know the type. Information paralysis.
Sounds incredibly overwhelming. Drowning in details, losing the big picture. That's such a common problem, isn't it? So much data, it actually hides the answers.
Absolutely. And this is where visual thinking was a game changer for them. Instead of wading through hundreds of pages,
They drew a picture.
essentially, yes, they used visual techniques to condense all that data into a single powerful image. It showed why the company wasn't well known and, crucially, why change was possible.
Okay, but it wasn't just a picture anyone could instantly understand.
Right. It needed a brief explanation, walkthrough, but compared to that impenetrable wall of survey data, it was incredibly effective for getting the complex story across quickly and clearly to stakeholders.
It really shows that a good visual, even needing some context, beats mountains of text.
Definitely. Now, Rome also gives us a useful way to think about how different people approach this stuff. He talks about 3 groups based on their comfort with drawing. Understanding this can really help teams collaborate.
Okay, so first, the I can draw group. The black pen people.
Yeah, those who just grab a pen and sketch without hesitation. Natural visualizers, maybe.
Then the I can't draw but group.
The yellow pen people, he calls them. The highlighters. They might hesitate to draw themselves, but they often have really sharp insights. They're great commentators.
They think verbally first. Use labels.
Often, yes. And they make connections that need explaining. Rome reckons this group is often about half the people in a typical meeting.
That rings true. You see people pointing things out on someone else's drawing. In the third group.
The I can't draw group, they actively resist visual expression, maybe feel intimidated by it.
But the key point is, this isn't about age or job title.
Exactly. He stresses that. You can have a CEO who doodles constantly and another who avoids whiteboards like the plague. It's a skill, a mindset, not some fixed trait based on your background. Anyone can develop it.
This connects to his garage sale principle, which I found interesting.
Ah, yes. The idea that everything looks different when you see it all laid out at once.
Like laying out all your stuff before a garage sale. See patterns, junk, treasures.
Precisely. He relates it back to Daphne's overwhelming survey data. Seeing it all visually helps you make sense of it, identify patterns, spot what matters.
And our brains are actually wired for this. Through something called precognitive visual triage. Sounds fancy.
It does, but the concept is simple. Your eyes and brain constantly scan visual input, prioritizing what to focus on before you even consciously think about it.
Like an automatic filter.
Exactly. It's evolutionary. Quickly distinguishing lines for direction, shading for depth, textures for edges. That was vital for survival. Spotting the predator in the grass,
Makes sense. Survival depends on rapid visual assessment.
Right. Rome uses the analogy of looking at a car engine. You might not be a mechanic,
Definitely not.
but your eyes might instantly spot a loose wire. Something just looks wrong. You see the broken pattern, maybe even guess where it should connect. That's seeing, identifying anomalies, making inferences visually.
To illustrate this more, he uses that mental exercise. With a friend, a dog, and a bird.
Yeah, the bird dog drill. It's like a mini thought experiment. By creating this simple scene in your mind, you're modeling your own visual processing. Even with eyes closed, your brain is juggling a lot of visual info.
And you can simultaneously process The who, the friend, dog, bird, and the where, their positions, movements.
Exactly. It shows we have separate brain pathways for what something is and where it is. They work together, but they're distinct.
Pretty amazing.
And the fact that the outcome, like whether the bird flies off, can vary depending on your mental model, shows how interpretation shapes what we see.
Okay, so all this background, the brain science, the different types of thinkers, leads us to Rome's core framework, the SQVID.
Yes. That mnemonic he finally nailed down on the train. SQVID. It stands for 5 key questions to bring clarity to any idea.
Right, so the questions are simple or elaborate,
Qualitative or quantitative,
visionary or execution,
individual or comparison.
and difference like the way things are versus how they could be.
Exactly. It's a guide for thinking about the kind of visual message you need before you start sketching.
And he mentions the warm, right brain stuff at the top, simple, qualitative, visionary.
Uh-huh. And the cool left brain stuff at the bottom, complex, quantitative, execution focused.
So CSQVID acts as a bridge.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It helps bridge understanding between different perspectives. The big picture person and the details person can use it to find common ground. It encourages a well-rounded visual approach.
Let's dig into that first question. Simple or elaborate? He makes an interesting point that the opposite of simple isn't complex.
But elaborate, yeah, that's subtle but important. He uses the Mobius strip example. Mathematically complex, sure, but the concept is simple, a one-sided loop.
So the goal isn't just simplification.
Not necessarily dumbing down. It's about making the complex understandable by making it visible.
And how simple or elaborate depends on the audience.
Absolutely. Their familiarity with the topic. Like Jeff Hawkins's brain drawings, a super simple one for a general audience, a much more elaborate one for fellow neuroscientists. Same core idea, different levels of detail.
Match the visual complexity to the audience. Got it. Okay, next. Qualitative versus quantitative. He uses the pilot analogy.
Right. Flying by the seat of their pants, intuitive, qualitative feel, versus flying by the numbers, data-driven, quantitative precision.
And the Neil Armstrong moon landing story fits here.
Perfectly. He had to switch modes instantly. The planned landing site was full of boulders. He had to take manual control, fly by feel, overriding the quantitative plan based on qualitative visual input. Shows you need both.
Even in something that technical.
Especially what then, maybe. He contrasts those crazy complex Apollo dashboards with modern ones like Missy Cummings's VAVI display.
What does that do?
It cleverly blends both. It has qualitative cues like visual arms showing ascent or descent rate, alongside precise numbers. It merges intuition and data.
Which is the goal for business dashboards too, right? That integrated understanding.
Exactly. Okay, briefly, the other SecuVid questions. Vision or execution?
Showing the big picture where we're going or the detailed how we'll get there depends on the goal.
Then individual or comparison?
Showing something alone versus showing it next to something else. Like the Southwest Airlines napkin sketch, that simple triangle comparing Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. Powerful comparison.
Yeah, a classic example of a comparative vision. And finally, the way things are versus the way they could be.
Using visuals to highlight a current problem, like that bank study on interruptions, and then showing a better future state.
So the whole SecuVid framework gives you these dimensions to think through before you draw anything. Ensures you cover the key aspects of your message visually.
So SQVID helps you imagine, but then you need to show it. Rome stresses it's not just about fancy drawings. He introduces visual frameworks, a visual codex, linked back to the 6 W's.
Exactly. A structure for your visuals. Different problems naturally fit different frameworks, like a when problem.
Often calls for a timeline. Makes sense.
And even within a framework like a timeline, SQVID helps you decide the details. Like that project timeline example, you can make it highly detailed, quantitative, focused on execution, showing every deadline if that's what the situation demands, guided by those SQVID questions.
Okay, let's get into the specific frameworks and rules. First, portraits for who-what problems.
Yeah, and he suggests a neat starting point. Draw your own company first. Gets you in the right mindset before tackling customers or competitors.
Good tip. And he emphasizes labeling everything, even if it seems obvious.
Crucial. Label shapes, give pictures a title. What's obvious to you might not be to others. He shows mapping different customer types, execs, sales, accountants to their specific needs from, say, software, security, brand, reliability. A simple portrait can show those connections.
Then charts for how much. What's key here?
Focus on the data. Insightful data isn't boring. Use the fewest pictures needed. And consistency is vital. Same chart types, same axes. Otherwise, you confuse people. Remember the flying off a cliff analogy for inconsistent visuals?
Yeah, jarring. He showed visualizing customer types first vaguely, then clearly with coordinates and numbers.
Right. And using bar charts for totals, pie charts for proportions. Then the real power comes when you combine data, like customer numbers and their spending. That's how they found executive and technicians had way higher spending power than accountants, a surprising insight.
Okay, next. Maps for where? Problems, not just geography, right?
Nope. Any spatial relationship between components. Org charts, Venn diagrams, process flows. Start with the main feature, define coordinates, then layer details like connections. Maps are familiar, versatile. He encourages mapping influence, not just hierarchy.
Like mapping those customer needs again, showing overlaps, or mapping software components to find weak spots.
Exactly. Visualizing the relationships and structure. Then timelines for when.
The go-to for scheduling, he used that software project example. Phases: discovery, design, develop, test, deploy.
Yeah, and then layering info onto it. Dates, teams, milestones, dependencies. Creating that comprehensive view. And then adding context, comparing the project costs, say $9 million, to past costs or company revenue. Adds perspective.
Makes the number meaningful. Then flowcharts for how.
Showing how things influence each other. Processes, cause and effect. The chocolate company training example was good mapping rules. Who, courses, what, hours, how much, in one clear flow. Everyone's on the same page.
And finally, the big one, multiple variable plots for why.
These let you layer multiple variables, who, what, how much, where, when, onto one chart to reveal deeper insights, like that software competitive landscape.
Plotting competitors by platform, open versus proprietary, and features, with bubble size for revenue.
Exactly. That kind of plot can show market shifts, gaps, opportunities, helps justify big decisions like that $9 million investment in a new platform. But these complex plots need careful explanation.
Which brings us to showing. It's not just making the picture, it's presenting it.
Right. The whole look, see, imagine, show process culminates here.
Yeah.
And showing isn't always polished slides. Often it's live, interactive whiteboarding.
And you need to look aloud.
Crucial for complex visuals. Guide the audience. Explain the axes, the dimensions, what represents what. Don't just throw it up there, that bowling alley analogy again. Guide their eyes. Answer their questions about data, implications. This is where you explain the so what and make your recommendations.
He also uses that pizza versus gourmet meals analogy for meetings.
Yeah, a helpful distinction. Routine meetings. Quick pizza pictures might be fine. Low expectations.
But big presentations, board meetings, client pitches.
That needs a gourmet meal visual. More detailed, insightful, polished. You tailor the visual effort to the context and the stakes.
Makes sense. So the core idea is visual thinking as this universal, portable toolkit.
Exactly. Reliable, always available. But it needs to be memorable, easy to recall when you need it on the spot.
Which leads to his final framework, the 3, 4, 5, 6, like a pocket guide.
Precisely. A simple way to remember the key components. The 3 is the thinking process.
Look, see, imagine. Gather info, find patterns, envision solutions.
The 4 is the 4 main ways of seeing.
Who, what, how much, where, when, basically condensing the 6 W's.
The 5 is the 6 vid framework itself.
Simple, elaborate, qualitative, quantitative, vision, execution, individual comparison, difference, those key questions.
And the 6 is the 6 frameworks for showing.
Portraits, charts, maps, timelines, flowcharts, multiple variable plots, your visual toolkit.
And his practical advice. Always have paper and pen. Even a napkin works.
And just start drawing. Draw a circle, give it a name. The first line is the hardest.
So true. He also briefly touches on the neuroscience again.
The what, where, how, pathways in the brain, linking back to the 6 W's, and that rapid visual triage.
Yeah, grounding it in how our brains actually work. And he mentions tools, too, briefly.
Digital tools for each framework: PowerPoint, Excel, MindJet, MS Project.
Right. Plus, appendices in the book with more resources, the science, his workshop info. Lots to explore further.
So, wrapping this up, the key takeaway really seems to be that visual thinking. Using these pretty simple tools and frameworks, it's just incredibly powerful.
Yeah, powerful and accessible. It lets you clarify complex stuff, solve problems better, communicate more effectively.
We've looked at the practical techniques, the 6 W's, STAVD, the frameworks and the why behind it, how our brains process visuals. Hopefully this deep dive gives everyone a shortcut to being well informed on this vital skill. And maybe a final thought for you, our listener. Think about a challenge you're facing right now. Could even a simple sketch, maybe on an actual napkin, using the 6 W's or SQVD, could it offer a new perspective? A different way forward.
Definitely worth trying. Explore the resources, experiment, see the power of visual thinking for yourself.